U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace has earmarked billions of dollars to rebuild Gaza. During the inaugural summit in Washington, D.C. last week, leaders pledged $7 billion in addition to the $10 billion that's committed by the United States. The United Nations, the European Union and the World Bank estimate $70 billion is needed to rebuild Gaza, with more than 80% of buildings, including homes, hospitals and schools, destroyed. Joining us now from Cairo is Mohamed Higazy. He is a former Egyptian ambassador and former Egyptian assistant foreign minister. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Anna.
So Egypt is among 27 countries that have signed up or are committed to signing up to President Trump's Board of Peace. So far, as I mentioned, $17 billion have been pledged for Gaza reconstruction. What is Egypt's role in this Board of Peace?
Well, I think the Egyptian role is indispensable in all forms, being in the diplomatic efforts that has led us to reach the ceasefire agreement. In the reconstruction, Egypt is the border country to Gaza, and also in peace and security, Egypt is training Palestinian police, as well as we are hosting for almost 2 months now the Palestinian Technocratic Authority that will enter the moment that we will all decide together. The Board of Peace has completed the 3 governance bodies, being the Board of Peace and the Palestinian Technocratic Authority. The third should be arranged. Last week, we've been all working towards the creation of the support and stability units. I'm sure that you followed the Centercom discussion in Egypt, and followed by a meeting in Doha last Tuesday. And hopefully this will complete the 3 governance bodies to govern Gaza.
The United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he's talked about what he sees as the role of this board. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
We have to get this right. There is no plan B for Gaza. Plan B is going back to war. No one here wants that. Plan A, the only path forward, is one that rebuilds Gaza in a way of enduring and sustainable peace, where everyone can live there side by side with one another and never worry again about returning to conflict, to war, to human suffering, and to destruction.
All right, so Ambassador, that was Marco Rubio talking there. My question is, under what legal authority, international legal authority, has this board been established, and under what international legal authority can it carry out these real estate developments in Gaza? This is, after all, occupied, besieged territory.
Definitely. The UN Security Council Resolution 2803 availed to this body a legal base to work on. The most important thing we did is to bring President Trump 20 points to the Security Council. So we gave the UN legitimacy and the heritage of literature related to the Palestinian rights to this end. At the same time, I agree with you that reconstruction is not a real state affair. It is political, socio-economic for people under occupation, that at the end of the tunnel they should see light. And I'm sure that we will all work to avert any result to manage the conflict, not to solve the conflict.
Okay, Ambassador, just to clarify something here, are you saying that the United Nations Security Council has approved this Board of Peace and what it intends doing in Gaza?
Indeed, the whole roadmap given by President Trump was taken to the body of this resolution. This resolution endorsed the 21 points of President Trump roadmap, and it has given clarity to the establishment of the 3 governance body, the stabilizing force, the Palestinian Technocratic Authority, and the Board of Peace.
Right. So there is no mention of a 2-state solution in Marco Rubio's comments. However, this is what the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres had to say about that. Let's listen to him.
We are living in a world where mass suffering is excused away, where humans are used as bargaining chips, where international law is treated as a mere inconvenience. Conflicts are multiplying and the impunity has become a contagion. That is not due to a lack of knowledge, tools or institutions. It's the result of political choices. The crisis of respect for human rights does not stand alone. It mirrors and magnifies every other global fracture. Humanitarian needs are exploding while funding collapses.
And Ambassador Guterres also pointed to the violation of human rights, the violation of international law, and said, and I'm quoting him here directly, he said, the two-state solution is being stripped away in broad daylight, unquote. What is Egypt's position on two states?
Definitely, this is the fundamental base of all our diplomatic effort. The two-state solution will offer to the region stability and prosperity, and it will bring a right that has been denied for almost 100 years to the Palestinians. So I think this is the ultimate goal, according to the Trump plan. There is a political path, and as Minister Rubio said a while ago, that a political horizon where the two parties will live side by side. It means that there is a Palestinian identity that has to be joined together with the West Bank and East Jerusalem to create the future Palestine. If the Gaza Drive led us through to link the Palestinian Authority in a given moment, say 2027, then we can talk about the geographical unity of the Palestinian state.
Ambassador, if that is the ultimate goal, two states, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state, what does one make of the fact that there are no Palestinians represented on this board of peace? This real estate plan that was put forward by President Trump's son-in-law was not approved by the Palestinians.
Well, I think the situation in this plan is by far better than leaving the situation to the harmful attitude of the Israelis and the collateral damage they are making to the civilian population in Gaza under the pretext of fighting Hamas. You have to drag the situation to where you want. You will not be dragged to where they want. I'm sure that this real estate solution will lead to confrontation.
Yeah, I get your point on that. But why are there no Palestinians having a say in this? This is, after all, their land, their homes, their communities.
I assure you, the presence of Egypt and many other Arab countries, besides the presence of the technocratic Palestinian Authority and the presence of the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, makes it quite clear that we will lead the situation where the Palestinians should gain at least their right of self-determination.
Okay, Egypt will host an emergency Arab summit that takes place next week. The summit has been called to counter calls from Trump to seize Gaza and forcibly expel Palestinians to Egypt, to Jordan, and to other nations in the region as well. I mean, how does that square with what you're telling me about the ultimate goal being two states?
I assure you that deportation is an Egyptian red line, and we declare that to everybody, and we will defend this important principle as a basic for peace. Palestinian has suffered for many years, and we are not willing to inflict more damage and injustice on them. We can fight this war, and we can make sure that the Palestinian has the right place in the Middle East, where the territorial integrity of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza is united according to the ICG
Ambassador,
in July 2024.
Right, Ambassador, one final point. I mean, doesn't Egypt's membership in this board of peace lend legitimacy to what is an illegal occupation?
No, we are trying to get rid of the occupation, but we have to be practical and move towards creating light in this dark tunnel
Yeah.
and bring the situation to where the Palestinian needs and for their rightful right for a statehood.
Okay, Ambassador Mohamed Higazy, thanks so much for being with us. Since the ceasefire in October, more than 600 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, and tens of thousands of families are living in makeshift tents, offering little protection from heavy rains and a harsh winter. The United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk says the situation there remains catastrophic. Joining us now from Jerusalem is Sara Yael Hirschhorn. She's a historian at the University of Haifa and a fellow with the Jewish People Policy Institute. Also with us is Xavier Abu Eid. He is a political scientist based in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. And Nabil Khoury is a former U.S. diplomat and author of Bunker Diplomacy, an Arab-American in the U.S. Foreign Service, Personal Reflections on 25 Years of U.S. Policy in the Middle East. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Nabil Khoury, let me start with you. President Trump's Board of Peace has pledged $17 billion for reconstruction efforts in Gaza. There are no Palestinians on this board, nor do Palestinians have any voice in the future of this occupied territory. In their homes, hospitals, their schools, all almost entirely demolished by Israel. What is your assessment of this Board of Peace and its motives?
Well, first of all, the money is being pledged. It's not there yet. Secondly, there's nothing in this entire plan and new boards being established for the Palestinians. This is more appropriately called the Board of Real Estate Agents. It's a business deal of real estate, in this case Gaza, but ultimately it will move on to the West Bank. The landlord is Israel, which will benefit and remain ultimately in control. And Donald Trump will be the manager of funds. There will be companies if it comes to actual reconstruction. And there will be funding from some Gulf countries. But in the end, the vision of this is for Western companies, for tourism, for exploiting the land, but nothing is mentioned about Palestinian rights, autonomy, self-determination, nothing of the sort.
Right, Nabil, we just talked with the former Egyptian ambassador. Mohamed Higazy is actually the former assistant foreign minister of Egypt as well. And he says, look, this Board of Peace is all legit. It was all sanctified in that resolution at the United Nations Security Council, and it's all part of President Trump's 20-point plan.
Right. Well, I mean, with all due respect to him, legit according to whom? The partition of plan of Palestine going back to 1947 was legit in that the UN passed it. From that day till now, the dispossession of Palestinians and the last 2 years, the mass murder of them, has also been legitimized by international players who do not have the interest of the Palestinian population at heart.
Okay, let me get Sarah's view on this. Sarah, what is your view on this? And Nabil Khoury telling us there that Israel will continue to control Gaza, that it will, in effect, become the landlord in what is a real estate enterprise.
Look, I've expressed my skepticism about the Board of Peace on this program several times in the past, and I remain skeptical even after the latest meeting last week. I'm not necessarily sure that Israel will remain in control. Right now, it's behind the yellow line, and the area of construction and redevelopment will be taking place mainly from what I expect sort of on the other side, kind of especially where there are significant real estate interests in developing the coastal area and for tourism and business and other capacities. But I have to agree with Ambassador Khoury that I saw what was leaked of this 3-minute promotional video for the reconstruction of Gaza, and it really looks like something you would see in a New York gentrification scheme, and I don't exactly understand how it will benefit average Gazans who obviously are not going to be able to afford to be living in high-priced luxury condominiums and going to casinos and all the local attractions. I think where the emphasis needs to be is on reconstruction and redevelopment for a population in need that needs basic housing, basic infrastructure, basic humanitarian relief, instead of moving to some phase down the road where Gaza becomes a paradise of multinational corporations and tourism.
Xavier, let's look at the situation in Gaza right now. The United Kingdom's state-owned media outlet, the BBC, it is reporting that Hamas is reasserting control over Gaza's security, taking over tax collection and other government services. If this is indeed true, what does it tell us about Hamas in Gaza and about the Israeli onslaught to destroy the movement?
Thanks for having me in the program. I think, first of all, that Hamas knows or should know by now that they are not going to have a place in the future of the governance of Gaza. But I think the problem here is not about what Hamas thinks or not, it's about what kind of plans are being presented in front of Palestinians. For Israel, the key aspect here is to avoid international law, to avoid any sort of accountability, and that's precisely what the 20 points of President Trump and the Board of Peace is providing. We are coming out of a full-fledged genocide, over 20,000 children killed by Israel. We are all getting to know the details now, and all we are talking at this stage is whether the Board of Peace will take control of Gaza today or tomorrow. I think that there are other elements that should be considered, including something else that this Board of Peace and Resolution 2803 of the Security Council did to Palestine, which is the fragmentation of Palestine, which was also another Israeli interest, not to talk about a Palestinian state by taking all the talk in Gaza and giving a green light now for the annexation of the occupied West Bank. So what we are facing today is a scenario that for some people may not be very comfortable when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu, but when you look at the interests, now Israel is avoiding precisely what they don't want to see or to talk about, which is international law and accountability.
Sara, it's been 4 months since the ceasefire was announced, yet according to reports from Al Jazeera as well as the New York Times, Israel has attacked Gaza on 120 out of 138 days. These are all violations of the ceasefire. Hundreds of Palestinians, as we've been reporting, have been killed, including hundreds of women and children. What is it going to take for the Israeli attacks to stop?
Well, let's go back to the day that the negotiated peace, or what we might call a ceasefire, which hasn't obviously been a true ceasefire, came into agreement. Hamas was supposed to return the bodies of all the hostages, living and dead, within 72 hours, and then immediately turn towards a phase of disarmament and disassembling itself. None of this happened on the timetable that we were expecting. The last hostage came back to Gaza from Gaza only about a month ago. And while there has certainly been an immense amount of tit for tat across this yellow line, including situations where I agree that there are likely human rights violations. The key point here is that Hamas has not actually disarmed itself, which was the core component of this ceasefire. So we're really at a standstill where Israel is trying to hold the line against what remains a empowered and armed terrorist regime in charge of Gaza, and we can't really move to the next phase of anything, including any kind of reconstruction of Gaza in a way that hopefully would benefit average Palestinians as much as international real estate brokers, until Hamas disarms itself. So I think we're at a bit of a crossroads here, because the border peace cannot move forward.
Yeah. Sara, are you saying then that the Israeli attacks during this ceasefire period are justified because Hamas didn't fulfill its part of the deal?
Well, look, I'm not the Israeli government. I'm not the Israeli Judiciary Court. I'm not the Israeli Army supervisors. I think from what we understand from the open source news media, there were several times where, more than several times, dozens of times, where Hamas operatives approached the yellow line, fired across the yellow line, shot mortars across the yellow line, were trying to smuggle themselves up through tunnels underneath the yellow line. So I don't think it was all, benign activity on the part of Hamas. I
Yeah.
also believe there probably were occasions where Palestinian civilians approached the line and for whatever reason warnings were not heeded and really tragic incidents took place. But I can't adjudicate each and every one of these
Right.
cases, but I think the fundamental question is that Hamas remains in control of 2/3 of the Gaza Strip right now, and without their willingness or someone else's willingness to enforce the understanding that Hamas is going to disarm and essentially um, dissemble itself as an organization, there is going to be no further progress. Israel will maintain its hold on the yellow line, and no activities of the Board of Peace will really be able to continue.
Okay, Nabil Kuri, what is your view on that Hamas has also violated the ceasefire agreement that was announced back in October, and that we've seen the Israelis attack more than 1,000 times, according to some reports, during the period since that ceasefire was announced, resulting in the deaths of more than 600 people.
Look, I'm sure Sara makes some good points, and that she is aware of the ultimate unfairness of this whole situation towards the Palestinians. But as a historian, she should also be aware that the emergence of Hamas in the 80s was under Israeli supervision and assistance. And at that time, Israel had decimated the PLO in Beirut in '82 and wanted Hamas as a countermeasure to balance the PLO and to further weaken the PLO. And now, after all these years, they are trying to decimate Hamas. I'm not sure Hamas is the issue in the end. Israel and certainly the Trump administration both are willing to put up with Hamas as long as Hamas will kowtow to what they ask Hamas to do. Trump doesn't mind Hamas. He took out Maduro, but left the Maduro regime in charge in Venezuela. As long as Hamas is weakened, and right now they are, like it or not, the only authority for the Palestinian survivors in Gaza. What sort of leadership the Palestinians have ultimately will be up to the Palestinians to decide. All the international community can do and should do is to prepare the circumstances so Palestinians can indeed choose their leadership independently and lead an independent life in the future. Right now, it doesn't look very good.
Xavier, I want to turn to what's going on in the occupied West Bank right now. There was a very scathing report that was issued by the United Nations Human Rights Council, which warned that Israeli policies in the occupied territory are aimed at, and I'm quoting here, altering the character, status and demographic composition of the occupied West Bank, raising concerns of ethnic cleansing. We are also getting daily reports of settler violence against Palestinians in that territory. What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, I have to say that it's totally outrageous, but very telling, that when Israel has killed over 600 Palestinians in Gaza since the ceasefire was reached. This is considered here to be something like a sort of detail, but we're talking about 600 human beings, and an important number of them children. So it's not just like a detail that both sides have violated the ceasefire. There is an occupying power here that has severely violated the ceasefire. And as Saudi Arabia said clearly, they are not a partner for a ceasefire. How come they can be a partner for peace? And what has happened here in the occupied West Bank, I think it clarifies what the Israeli government is doing. What's happening in Gaza, just as in the West Bank, is an attempt to make more Palestinians leave the country. It's to coerce people into leaving Palestine. And what's happening here, it's unbelievable. You know, I live in Ramallah. I'm coming today from Bethlehem. I saw the new settlement being built by Israeli settlers in Bet Sahur, nearby Bethlehem, that is going to kill one of the last Palestinian Christian communities we have here at the Shepherd's Field. Then I went to Al-Khadr, nearby on the western side of Bethlehem, where settlers continue to attack Palestinians in order to take over their agricultural lands, and the army goes there to demolish their homes. Over the past few weeks, we've had dozens of home demolitions without any sort of meaningful Israeli domestic opposition to this. I mean, we don't see the Israeli opposition coming out saying that this is wrong and people should be held accountable. On the contrary, we see one of the leaders of the opposition, Yair Lapid, coming out basically just like Mike Huckabee, the religious fundamentalist ambassador of the U.S. in Israel, claiming that the Bible is the deed that Israel has in order to take over the land. So what we are seeing here is a very clear government policy in order to push the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, both in Gaza as well as in the occupied West Bank.
Right, Sarah, is that Israeli government policy? Because there have been some developments over the past week in which the Israelis have reinstated land registration, something that was last done in 1967, which will declare large parts of the West Bank as Israeli land. There's also more administrative duties being handed over to the military as well. So is this part of an effort to annex the West Bank?
Sure. I think that a lot of what we're seeing is part of not only a kind of deliberate strategy, but also a kind of politics of despair, that, you know, if I'm looking at it from the state of Israel's point of view, they don't see an opportunity for a negotiated peace with the Palestinians in the near future, especially not after October 7th, and are trying to decide what kind of what the future looks like. I am very deeply concerned about these new announced decisions. Obviously, it's not only about the politics of today, which may be a politics of despair, but it's also about the politics of tomorrow and the future, which needs to leave room for the possibility of a two-state solution. So I don't know what these choices will bring. I understand in part what I think is motivating them, which isn't only, you know, the ideological wing of the Netanyahu coalition, which obviously represents extreme ultranationalist interests that are also backing settler violence, and this is not something that, you know, I think should go on, and I think many you know, poll after poll after poll shows that the Israeli public also agrees with me on that fact. But I think it also represents a larger indecisiveness or a decision not to decide about what to do until it seems like Israelis and Palestinians could come back to a negotiating table. But obviously, it erodes any possibility for, you know, a meaningful division of territory in the future.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Arlen Naidu in Washington.